Hello there. This is the Extra podcast. That's pretty hard to say. My name is Fredy.
Start over?
Start over.
Yeah, sure.
The third word out of your mouth was was mistake.
Your mouse.
I'm
This is gonna be
English
awesome.
is a second language. Okay, great start. Okay.
Just do it in Spanish.
Hola,
Hola, ¿cómo está?
Hello there. This is the Extra podcast. My name is Fredy, and I'm here with a few lovely individuals who I will allow to introduce themselves.
Andy Steiger.
Jonathan Giesbrecht.
Jeff Bucknam.
Fantastic. The redhead here, Jonathan, is the only Canadian.
As you can see, the
Yes,
redhead.
as you can see. I invited him to bring a Canadian perspective.
Are you Canadian? Where were you born?
I was born in Vancouver.
All right.
Yeah.
Freddie, it's nice to have you. What are you doing here?
I am a summer worker and also an immerse intern.
So you're a pastoral intern just starting just like a year behind Daniel, basically.
So
in
I'm
the program.
replacing him, essentially. That's why I'm here.
All right.
He's away
Already.
on a trip, and I'm taking his spot. I preached at NYA for him. I'm now emceeing for him. I don't know what else I could do to fully replace him.
You're the new Daniel, is what you're
I'm
saying.
new and improved.
Okay, what about
The bar
you?
was really low.
Tell us a little bit about you, Freddie. Where are you from? How'd you end up here?
I'm originally from Grants Pass, Oregon. I came up here about
America.
That's right. Shout out to Grants Pass. Shout out to Oregon. I came up here 5 years ago on a mission trip with Trek with MB Mission, and then a classic love story. I met a girl on the trip. Ended up staying here for school. I picked my school because I liked a girl in the country. I wouldn't recommend that necessarily. It worked for me. It worked for me, and we've been married almost 4 years now. So,
Congratulations. That's great.
thank you.
You just graduated weeks ago.
Yes, 3 weeks ago from Columbia Bible College. Yeah.
That's
Loving it so
fantastic.
far. Absolutely.
And I got to give a shout out to Grants Pass, Oregon, where you're from.
Do we got it?
It is a gorgeous place.
Oh.
And
Yep,
there is
absolutely.
a beautiful river there called the Rogue River.
That's right.
And
That's right.
It's just it's
I've
a
only
lovely
ever
place.
stayed in Grants Pass when I've been passing through, and I was very tired driving my car, and so
on your way to California. I'm
yeah,
guessing.
That's
me
right.
and some friends got out of the car and stayed. I think at the Best Western or something on the side of the road
it's pretty,
there.
Yeah, it's
So
decent. It's clean.
It was a
It's
very
not too
exciting.
Grants
The
Pass
standards.
is
It was
basically Grants Pass is basically a rest stop.
I didn't get
as
murdered.
people go to nicer places.
Didn't get
but we're
murdered,
pretty
I'm
nice
good.
too.
Yep.
No, we're pretty nice too.
Well, good, Freddie. It's nice to have you. Welcome here. Now, what's your actual name though?
My actual name is Fredy Orozco. First and last.
Middle
no middle
name?
name.
No middle name.
Nope.
Wow, and you
No middle names?
No middle names.
you are and kind of a English first language, or is
Spanish is
Spanish
actually
is your
my
first language?
That's right.
That's great.
But I don't have an accent.
Well, you do. You have a Southern Oregon
I
accent.
was just
Okay.
going to say it. As the honorary Canadian in this group, you've got an accent,
well,
buddy.
I say A just like everyone else. A.
yeah, okay.
Okay, bud. No, I learned English pretty quick, right? So I was 5 or 6, and I learned mostly from television and then from school, obviously. But I had functional English just from watching basically Sesame Street and Barney.
Sesame Streets.
Sesame Streets with mis amigos.
I like to watch the Sesame Street.
Yes, yeah, it was good. It worked for me. So,
That's
anyways, it's good to be here with you guys today. And in light of current events, there was a question I wanted to bring up. So, as you're familiar, if you watch the news or read anything online, the U.S. just moved an embassy to Jerusalem from Tel Aviv, right? And this has been one of the campaign promises from Mr. Trump. And it's been a huge deal. It's been blown up all over the interwebs. And it brings up an important question, I think, that a viewer actually sent in.
I have a question
It's
that's
not a
before
viewer.
that question.
A listener.
Yeah.
Does Trump do anything that doesn't blow up the web?
You know,
That at any rate,
that's the
continuing
more
on.
important question. Anyways, the big question is, what is the relationship between national Israel and Christians, right? Like that. So if you two could speak, or the three of you could speak into that, we could benefit.
I don't know if you'd benefit. This is a big issue, actually. There are a lot of people who think that because national political Israel, which is what exists in the Middle East today, but not in some people's minds, not in terms of not in its fullness, in terms of the full amount of land that they are supposed to have had. The argument is that because national political Israel is described in Scripture and has a future in Scripture, and most people would point to Romans 11 as an indication of that, because it has a future that way, that the responsibility of the Christian is to bless national political Israel. So that's a viewpoint that is often called dispensationalism in Christian circles, and it's very well attested among lots of scholars these days and stuff. In fact, the seminary I attended, Dallas Seminary, is historically known as a dispensational school. If you know anything about Masters Seminary in Southern California, it's got historic dispensational sort of stuff. There's another view, or another few views, but one of the other big views is actually that the church has in some senses fulfilled or replaced Israel. And so what that means is, for example, when Jesus comes, he surrounds himself with 12 disciples, which is an odd number, right? And he crosses he's baptized into the Jordan River, and he's tempted in the wilderness for 40 days. All these numbers, all these imagery should sound familiar to you. So when Matthew's describing all these events, he seems to be arguing that Jesus is the culmination of, or the fulfillment ultimately of Israel, and he is. I mean, even in Paul's letters, what you end up getting is Jesus being described as the seed, right, of Abraham, and where Israel, the national political Israel prior to him, failed, Jesus actually fulfills, and therefore those who argue this way tend to say that there's not a distinct future for national political Israel, that all of God's promises have now been placed in the church, which is made up of Jew and Gentile alike.
And what would that view be called, to contrast to dispensationalism?
It tends to be called covenant theology or something to that effect. There are people who have a background in dispensationalism. There's different, there's varying halfway houses between them. There are some people who believe that there is I, for example, believe that there's a future for national political Israel, but okay. I think that Jesus is the fulfillment of all the promises given to Abraham, and all those who have faith in Jesus will receive those promises. And so the future for national political Israel for me is it's just the way I read Romans 11. So that makes me what we call historically premillennial.
Okay.
But whatever. There's lots of different viewpoints on this within the Christian church. To be honest with you, this is a debate that the Christian church has had for a long, long time. Some people see it as a significant doctrinal issue, that if you end up abandoning national political Israel, in the sense that, my mind is just racing to these. I've received, as a pastor, letters from ministries that actually support elderly Israeli folks who, in many cases, they're atheist or whatever. They just have, there's no belief in them, but the belief among those who sent me these things saying, hey, support, kind of like, we do a compassion. Yeah. So it's an an elderly Israeli person.
Well, a child of God.
Because
child of God.
Of the belief that, how you treat Israel, national political Israel, in God's mind is how he's going to treat you. Now, I push back against that to say that if Jesus is the fulfillment of Israel, which is what I think the New Testament is largely arguing, that Jesus is the embodiment, he reconstitutes Israel with 12 disciples. Even letters, I'm thinking about the book of James, and others are using, in 1 Peter, are using titles for the church now that were once attributed to Israel. It seems to me that the church, because of their belief in Jesus, has in some ways, because Jesus is the fulfillment of Israel, the church receives the promises. That I would say that it's not how you treat Israel that's the issue; it's how you treat the true Israel, who's Jesus, is the issue. So what does that mean? Does that mean that we should treat Israel well or poorly? I think we should treat. I personally, this is me. You guys can debate about it. I think we should treat the nation of Israel in the same way we treat all nations, with charity in places and prophetic insight in places. Even if you believe that Israel is, there's a future for national political Israel, I still think that many of the ways that Israel acts toward its neighbors are the kinds of things that in the Old Testament they were not just criticized but judged for.
Yeah.
So I think there's a point, even if you do believe in a future for national political Israel, there is a point for which you can come to Israel and say, well, actually, some of the ways you guys are acting is really beneath the call that you have in your own scriptures. Israel, though, is one of the most atheistic states in the world. Just so you know, I mean, there's Jewish heritage, but if people are asked there, they are largely atheistic. But I also push the other side and say, look, I think that there are all sorts of ways that Palestinians and the neighbors of Israel have treated Israel with massive disregard.
So it's a complicated issue, is what
Massively
you're saying.
complicated,
Okay.
and ultimately it's a fight over this land. It's the belief that Israel says, no, Jerusalem is ours.
Yep.
Therefore, it is our historic capital. I'm putting that in air quotes, right?
Yeah.
It's our historic homeland, but it's also disputed that no, that's historic, Palestinian homeland. And so this move that Trump has made is basically to endorse the Israeli view of their own state, which, by the way, he has a right to do and Israel has a right to do because it is currently their state. It's just that the rest of the countries around are like, don't do that. It's going to inflame violence. And it has. Yeah. It's just a kind of a bombastic move in that regard. So it is a complicated issue. I don't think that there is just so you know, I don't personally think that there is a Christian take on the question of should the capital of Israel be in Jerusalem or Tel Aviv. I don't think that there's necessarily a Christian answer to that. I think that you can be a good Christian and hold either of those views. So anyway, you guys jump in. You can chastise me for my views.
The only thing I was going to add was what makes this so complicated and so heated is that you've got three religions that are calling, Jerusalem, that's holy to them, right? So you've got the
absolutely.
Christians, you've got the Jews, and you've got the Muslims. And so with, moving this embassy into Jerusalem, obviously, going along with what Jeff was saying, is that this becomes just heated once again and incites violence and anger. And so people then would question whether or not this is, worthwhile to do. Why not just leave things as they are?
Yeah.
Well, and then the other thing, too, that you're going to see right now going on in CNN is that they've been posting a lot about this and chastising Christians because there are Christians that see this as fulfillment of prophecy. And so they're raising these big questions. Is this more of religion going on here or politics? Or just some sort of bizarre mix of the two?
What's weird to me, though, is that the way that a lot of people in the secular West want to divorce religion and politics. And I know that sounds silly. Of course, you divorce religion and politics. That's the way we in the West think
Western
about it.
thought, yeah, totally.
But it's actually not the way the rest of the world thinks about it. Like, if you're Muslim, you don't see there being a massive... I mean, the Sharia law is something that you're supposed to be, but not every Muslim believes that, by the way. Just certain versions and brands of them. But it's not inconsistent for them to say, oh, Sharia law is something that should be used everywhere for the good of humanity. That's their belief. So in other words, politics grow out of one's religious beliefs. I would say the same thing about secularists. I think secularism is a religion, and I think that religious beliefs of secularism drive a kind of secular worldview that governs the way that people do their politics. I don't love the fact that people often say, well, we should separate those two, which is the way that I totally agree, Andy, that CNN and the others are saying, well, you just leave religion out of it. I mean, which is so naive. Stop it. How can people in the Middle East leave religion out of it? Yeah. That's just not true. And to be honest with you, we in the West don't leave religion out of it. It's just that people who are secular say that theirs isn't a religion, which is convenient for them. Yeah. So, like I said, I don't think that there's necessarily a Christian answer to it. I personally would prefer things that don't incite violence.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I was going to go with. To answer this reader's question, like, in truth, you talked about the different divisions even within the church's view on this issue. And truthfully, I'm not studied enough to actually articulate one way or the other. But the one thing I have heard before that I've really, it's resounded with me, is as soon as you hold the view that Israel is almost above reproach and cannot be challenged in a prophetic way. I like the way you worded that. I think the Christian response to Israel is a prophetic one where we should be seeking justice all the way around. Like the political Israel today is not above its actions. It's not, it's not that they aren't held apart from or not accountable for their actions today. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And because I mean, even just thinking about it, like if you think as a Christian, there are Christians in Palestine who may or may not have been wronged by political Israel. So as a Christian, are you standing against your brother for the sake of national Israel? Do you know what I mean?
In some cases you are. This is something that a lot of people don't know.
Right.
Is that there is a significant Christian Palestinian population
Totally.
there.
Right. So to just blindly say national Israel
in
is...
some cases, what you've got is secular Israel, which is, I mean, I'm using the word secular there because it's largely atheistic. Okay.
But
I mean,
not much different than other Western countries.
They are basically using violence against our brothers and sisters in Christ. Now, and you have Christians in the West cheering that on.
Right. And that's the part where you're kind of like,
very awkward.
Yeah.
And very difficult. However, with that said, I mean, I don't want to absolve the Palestinians of guilt either in much of what it goes on. This is why it's such a difficult issue and why peace in the Middle East has been so difficult to come by, is because, honestly, people are people. In every relationship, it usually takes two to tango, right?
Right. And this is the thing. As soon as you pick one, you pick I support Israel or I support Palestine. Yeah. It's kind of like that's not how it works in any relationship.
Yeah.
I mean, both of them have wronged each other. That's the nature of the reality of war.
I think the push for some is, though, that people feel theologically driven to support national political Israel. I will say that among many Pentecostal denominations and charismatics, the pro-Israel stuff is very popular,
right?
And so it's not uncommon for you to hear a lot of their preachers and others share that this is fundamental to the faith.
See, I've always presupposed that was because of the relationship between Pentecostal or the charismatic movement and dispensationalism.
Yeah,
is that
historically,
true?
Okay. Historically, that's been part of the deal. It's just interesting. Like, I mean, I've been to churches before where they'll have an Israeli flag,
right? Yeah.
In the auditorium along with.
Right.
An American flag
again,
and a Christian flag.
What
or
happens if a Palestinian brother is coming to visit you in your church and they see Israel flag up there? They're like, those people bombed my home.
So when I was in Texas and when I was doing my master's degree, I'm attending this school that is historically known for its dispensational thought and it's very pro-Israel, national political Israel stuff, which is, I mean, to be honest with you, when I went to classes there, I did not catch that much at all. Like most of my professors just did not hold that view. But historically, the school had that take. Well, this guy was from Lebanon, and he was in my Sunday school. They still do Sunday school there, right? Adult Sunday school. And so I have Sunday school class, got like 60 people in it, mostly young adults. And he comes up to me, and we start talking, and he said, so you're, second year at Dallas Seminary, second out of 4, yeah, uh-huh. And he said, can I share something with you? I said, what? He goes, and then he started to tell me about what had happened to his Christian family. And the reason that they were in the United States was because their homes were being bombed quite regularly by Israel, by rockets and other things like that, he had to work at one point, he himself had to work at one point in Israel, and the kinds of mistreatment that he faced as just a human being was unreal to me. I could not believe that happened to him. So he said to me at the end of all this, he said to me, so I need you to tell me, I'm a Christian. I need you to tell me what I'm supposed to do.
Right.
How should I think about this? And I told him, dude, I'm just second year at seminary, right? What am I supposed to say to you?
A lot of room to grow.
But I've remembered that conversation several times, Jonathan, precisely because of that question. And that very often when it comes to politics, and I'll just be pointed here, I am frightened for Christians that we, especially I'm saying we, you're the only Canadian here, we got 3 Americans here.
Yeah.
We Americans tend to value more the goals of the United States than we do the goals of the gospel. Right. So if the goals of the United States are going to be achieved by a certain president or by a certain policy, we will support it, even if it is going to create damage for the gospel and for its its promotion in a particular region or area. I struggle with that an awful lot because this is where I tend to be pretty Mennonite brethren and Anabaptist. I just think we serve a higher kingdom. And ultimately, yes, I am an American and that has a part to play in what I think. I live in Canada, has a part to play in what I think. I lived in New Zealand, has a part to play in what I think. But all of those nationalisms they sit underneath my Christianity. The fact that I am actually a Christian, I'm a slave of Jesus first. Yeah. And then I'm those other things. I'm a citizen of heaven first. And then I'm a citizen of the U.S. or Canada or whatever else. And I think it's a challenge for a lot of Christians to hold that thing. I'm very fortunate to live in Canada because I think you're allowed to. And I'm looking at you, Andy. I mean, you lived in the States for a lot of years. And so was that your experience? Or like, when you go back to the U.S., do you feel this kind of political tension? Or especially in this day and age of Donald Trump and people's opinions that are so polarized, some for, some against,
It is interesting when you leave the United States that you're able to see it in ways that perhaps you didn't see it before. And just to go along with what you guys were talking about, I mean, you really get a sense of the tension when you go to Israel, and particularly if you go into any Palestinian territories. While I was there, I went into Bethlehem, for example. And man, the tension that exists between them, and as we know, it goes both ways. But there is so much abuse that's taking place. And so it's really interesting. I think Christians need to be a little more thoughtful of what's going on because, there's a bit of a moral inversion that begins to happen here where you've got on the one hand, the world feeling sorry for the Jews, after World War II and wanting them to have a home and going out of their way.
Justifiably so.
Yeah, and justifiably so. But now we're getting this inversion, right? Where what was meant to be good is now.
And some of the ways that national political Israel handles their neighbors, it is shockingly authoritarian. Yep. And I don't want to say it's Hitlerish. But there are some similarities in the way that that's handled, which again is why I said before, Jonathan, that I think that no matter what viewpoint you have on this, even if you say that there is a future for national political Israel, Micah 6:8 is there, right? Seek justice, this is that passage. This is what the Lord requires of you to do justly, act, love mercy, and walk humbly with your God. So I think, as Isaiah 1, I'm thinking you hold your hands up to heaven and I won't listen to your prayers because there's blood on them. Yeah. I think that these passages, Amos 5, other ones, these prophetic texts that are talking about the way that Israel as an entity, as a national entity, is supposed to have treated the sojourner or the neighbor or and they haven't. Yeah. And God judges them. I think those passages, or at least those passages, are appropriate, even if you believe in a future national political Israel. And if you go where I go, which is I think actually Jesus is the fulfillment of those things, then you get even more like, well, man, you guys are a nation like all others, and you should be chastised for the way that you act. And likewise, they should be chastised for the kind of hate mongering that goes on among them and the suicide bombings and stuff. And it's hard to live in places like Israel. It is, because there's a chance that when you go to pizza, you're going to die. Yeah.
But in the United States, just to finish this idea though, that we've been getting at, and just to give some people some perspective, I think, Jeff, I'm sure you experience this as well. But when you live in the U.S., there is this sympathy for the Jews, for Israel, that is really quite something, particularly amongst Christians, that they still see them amongst evangelicals, that the Jews are God's chosen people, and that really in a lot of ways, even though they're very atheistic, that's just really a blind eye is kind of turned to that, and that this idea that really you need to, as a Christian, almost that you have an obligation to fight for Israel. Because they're God's chosen people.
Yeah, and that's why there is such support for them in the U.S. among some groups. Uh-huh.
In the literature, like if you've been reading anything in these last number of days, right? A term that I see consistently pop up is Zionist, right? And the Guardian, CNN, they're attaching this label to American evangelicals, and they're saying this is wholesale the view. So how would you respond to that?
I would say that that's not true. I would say that the news media in general struggles a great deal. The secular news media struggles a great deal whenever they wade into the waters of religion and nuance. That they end up painting with a huge
slight understatement
brush.
there.
Well, they do. I mean, like,
just a slight
okay, let's not.
They struggle somewhat.
I would say that they say that about Muslims as well. Like they treat every Muslim as if they're same. Like if you went and sat down with somebody who is a news reporter, this is just conjecture on my part, so maybe I'm wrong, but I would be surprised if they can tell you the historic difference between Shia and Sunni Islam and why it is that some
Iraq
believe and others don't, and what the majority is and what one area. And like, I really don't know if they understand all the nuances largely because I was educated in the same schools. I was at secular universities and communication departments, and I had journalism friends, and that the secular worldview there's two kinds of people in the world. There's the rational secular ones, and then there's the religious nut jobs. And the religious nut jobs are the people who fly planes into buildings. All of them are. Right.
Or
some
do
of them are
crusades or something
inconsistent.
like
Some
that.
of them are inconsistent and aren't as crazy, but they kind of are crazy. They're ruining their kid's life because they're teaching them a sexual ethic that we all know is stupid. But that's kind of the level of nuance you oftentimes get. And so often I find it interesting whenever I read somebody who's describing religion in the news, how little they actually understand. In fact, there was just an article this Easter where somebody was talking. I think it was somebody from the Huffington Post had written that that Easter was when Jesus it wasn't born, but was when Jesus ascended into heaven. And I was like, oh my, like how disconnected from Western history do you have to be to think that Easter is the celebration of the ascension of Jesus Christ into heaven? Now you might think, well, what's the big? No, it's the resurrection of Jesus from the dead. But that's the kind of naivete that you're dealing with. Like just even simple stuff they don't get right. And so it doesn't surprise me that people label all evangelical, that label now to be an evangelical is to be a Trump supporting, Israel supporting, hate monger as is represented by Westboro Baptist Church and their signs outside of, whatever homosexual people's funerals, decrying them as using horrible terms to talk about them. So that's the way that they perceive it. Even in the documentaries, that's the way it is. Oh, here's the way that all Christians think. Let's interview Westboro Baptist. What?
Yeah, because 200 people represent.
Not even that. There's like one family who represents it. But again, there's just not a lot of nuance. And admittedly, I would also say that part of the problem is that Christians don't have some of our spokespeople aren't very good. Okay, so you end up getting nut jobs on TV answering questions that they should not be answering.
I have a little bit of insight in that, though, as I've seen with different friends and whatnot involved on these TV shows. And what you see repeatedly is the people that they know will do a good job answering are the ones that they specifically don't ask.
Right.
Because why you don't get ratings?
They want the nutcases.
Yeah, they want the nutcases.
Well, it reinforces
because that
the
makes for good for
narrative,
TV.
too. Totally.
And
it
people are
reinforces,
entertained.
and it's more entertaining.
To be honest with you, Russell Moore should answer all the questions. I mean, or most of them, just because of he's very capable. He's a very capable answerer to the questions. He doesn't get pigeonholed into these things. He makes sure that the nuance. Russell Moore is the Ethics and Religious Liberty Commission guy from the Southern Baptist Convention. Is probably and he's an outstanding public intellectual. Ross Douthat should answer a lot of the questions. He writes for the New York Times, and he's a Catholic guy. Let these guys answer them. Because they do better than, and then they bring on pastor of local church such and such who gets on there, and you're like, I mean, seriously, if they asked me to go on there, I'd be like, nah, like I'm not going to be able to answer your questions on that level in the way that I wish I would like to. Anyway.
So then in summary, the relationship between Christians
complicated.
And national.
This Facebook post. It's
Israel.
Some people,
It's complicated.
Some people who are listening to
Their status.
this are going to be very committed to dispensationalist thought, and that is well within the Orthodox Christianity. There are going to be people who listen to this and are more comfortable with covenant theology. I'm one of them.
Yeah,
That's fine. These are not. again, I think at the end of it, Jonathan's right. We seek justice is the call of Christ ultimately, and so we are supposed to support those who seek justice.
So treat them the same, treat them like any other country, and speak prophetic words in calling them to justice. Great summary. So here we'll transition into...
Did you just commend your own summary?
Yes, I did. It's my first time on the podcast, so I need to be my own hype man.
He's been taking cues from me.
It's insightful, that one.
Slightly above average, perhaps. But
I would give it a B, solid B.
We'll round up.
Well, I don't want to round up. I think I rounded up to a B.
Okay.
But anyways, you preached this weekend, Andy. So is there anything you would like to add to the sermon that you
Andy was in mission and I was in
I was going to say Jeff and I spoke this week, really in some ways beginning to wrap up the book of Jude.
Felt good to be positive for a few minutes, didn't it?
Yeah, because as you know, Jude 3 sets the tone that he's attacking false teaching, and he does so thoroughly.
Yeah.
And at this point, in verses 20 to 21, he gets positive, as he talks about, well, what does it look like to be a Christian, a secure Christian in our faith? And this idea, he uses 3 imperatives there to build your faith. He talks about praying in the Spirit and keeping yourself in God's love. And so it felt good, right, to talk about what does that look like? What does it look like to be a Christian that's growing in your faith? I don't know about you, Jeff. The examples I used, or an example I used was rock climbing. And I talked about how in rock climbing you have a rope that's attached to you, but you have to you got to attach that rope to the rock as you're going up. And you realize the significance of setting those anchors as you go up because your life depends upon it. And when I read Jude, you really get the sense he's talking about your eternal destiny. So when he talks about the significance of false teaching, like he's not mincing words. He realizes the danger that's happening for this church and wants to obviously argue for them to contend for the faith. And one of the things I was using with that though is just, what does that look like when we're setting, when we're building our faith, when we're setting those anchor points, that we can trust them. And one of my arguments was, and I think Christians just need to continue to remember this, that faith isn't blind, that faith is trusting what you have good reason to believe is true. And you see this argued throughout the Gospels, throughout the New Testament. You have good reason to place your trust in Jesus Christ and to contend for that faith and to not give up on that. And to more than that, realize and to be encouraged that this faith will hold you.
Yeah, and I think that image of building yourselves up in your most holy faith is the way the language is. I think that what you're onto there is right, that it is an investigation of the reasons, right? So I tried to make the point that the more you know about a thing, the more committed to that thing, or more dogmatic you tend to be about that particular thing, more sure about it you are. And I think that's the case with the faith. And this is why people who end up studying apologetics tend to be more firm-footed in their faith, is because they have spent the time to look at the different viewpoints and look at, so what kind of reason is there for belief in a God, and in this particular God as is revealed in Jesus Christ, and why is it that we believe the resurrection is not just something that happens in people's minds, but is actually historically true, and what is the evidence for the scriptures and for their own claims to whatever word you want, infallibility, inerrancy, whatever. The knowledge about all of this stuff helps you. Right. I mean, I was greatly helped in seminary by studying textual criticism, which is the study of all the different documents that we have in the original languages, both Old Testament, New Testament, so Hebrew and Greek texts that we have in manuscript form. And what evidence do we have that what we're reading on the page is actually the original author's, close to the original author's language, or it is itself? And I thought when I got into this, oh man, the New Testament's going to be full of holes with this because there's so many different manuscripts and stuff. But one of the things you find out when you study textual criticism is how reliable this is. How crazy reliable it is.
I was actually going to ask you about that, Jeff, because one of the illustrations I gave on Sunday was that when I went to Bible college and then when I went off to master's degree and even in some ways, in PhD work, there's something in the back of your mind that you think, man, I wonder what's going to happen once I start asking questions of the Bible. And this is one of the things I encourage people, and I is listen, when you're reading your Bible, those are anchor points, right? Is you're reading God's word daily, is you're reading and investing yourself into his word, and you have questions that come up. Don't let those questions go by. You need to track those down. You need to, those are faith building moments. And back to this idea when you go off to college, well, I mean, that's what you're there to do. You're there to grab the Bible and shake it, and to see, like I'm going to go and I'm going to investigate and ask questions and learn more about this. And is it going to hold? And what I found when I went to Bible college and seminary and whatnot is, there's a part of you that almost wonders, is like you were saying, is there going to be a bunch of holes in this? And I found that each time my faith was strengthened.
It is ultimately, yeah. The truth is most people who get thrown around by whatever wind of doctrine are the people who tend to have not spent much time studying the truth claims of the scriptures. And that's why, I made the point that catechesis is so important, and why it is that some of the best ways that you can be discipled is by learning theology and learning these things. I think it's actually probably a necessary aspect of your spiritual life. But yeah, it's a great passage, and it's funny how Jude essentially what he says when he comes around to saying, okay, so what do you do in light of all these false teachers? He says stuff like, okay, so read your Bible.
Come on,
pray, right? Praying in the Holy Spirit, and look forward to having, which means, wait for it. Understand that you still have ways to go, and if you can read the Bible and pray a lot until you get there, it'll be good. Which is funny because it's so boring. You're like, okay, give us a secret, Jude. Tell us now. Okay, so
3 ways
there's
to
the
enhance your
Bible.
faith.
It's so funny too because that's what we tell everybody.
Yeah.
Essentially, I've said to people before, listen, if you want to keep following Christ your whole life, you need to find a faithful church that loves God's word, that loves prayer, that loves to focus on the historic doctrines of the church, and you need to go to that church for as long as you can. And if you move somewhere else, find another church that's like it and commit yourself to going there, because that's where you're going to get all this stuff in the end. And yes, in your personal life, commit yourself to reading scripture and studying and asking the questions and all that. But ultimately, I just think that the life of the church is so necessary to the life of the Christian.
Absolutely. And to me too, there's a cyclical moment to that, where you have, keeping yourself in God's love. You see, Jesus talks about this in John chapter 15, verse 9. He talks about, you keep yourself in God's love by following his commands. Right. And why do you follow God's commands? Well, because you trust him, and there's going to be moments where you're going to, have your challenges. And what do? Well, you pray, right? So that you can do what? So that you can follow his commands. And you see this motion to what discipleship,
right? And you build yourself up in your holy faith,
like,
so that you end up trusting the one who's given the commands, and you know him better. And it's all what Jude is saying is pretty straightforward and simple, and yet at the same time, I don't know, we're weird. We always want something new, like in discipleship discussions. That's all you ever want. Okay, so I got this new secret discipleship program. Right. It's got 4 chairs. You move from the first chair to the second chair, and then once you got the second chair, you got to jump over this hurdle and then get to the
and then spiritual get harder. Yeah,
and then if you do these 4 things right, you will. Which is funny because essentially Jude's like, nah, just Bible and prayer and church and stuff.
Okay, like that. But I still have to ask. So read your Bible. Pray consistently, read your Bible consistently. And then you mentioned catechesis, right? So what extra teaching resource would you recommend, hypothetically, if you were going to recommend an extra thing, despite the fact that Jude said all you need is prayer in the Bible and a church?
Well, I think you need to be in a place where those things happen. So prayer in the Bible, church is going to focus on scripture and getting you connected with the words of the Word of God in its context and stuff like that. So to me, if you're looking for a magic bullet,
that's it.
They don't exist.
Well, the closest thing to it is actually God's church.
Yeah, amen.
So, but I mean, church. A healthy church that actually has a focus on those sorts of things.
One thing though that I would just kind of add in there, because I think maybe what you were trying to aim for was, is there a certain book or something like that?
Yeah, any kind of resource, because people still ask me all the time, and I haven't studied enough to be able to recommend something. Oh,
well, here's what I was trying to get at.
What are the odds he offers? He says it right now.
Is
$20.
There's a book.
I'll have you know that I did not recommend my book. No, but seriously,
which book is that, Andy?
My thing is read the Bible.
Yep.
And there are going to be moments that you're going to have questions or your children are going to have questions from what they're experiencing or reading in life or in the Word, right? And my thing is, don't ever let those questions pass you by. Those are faith-building moments for you, and those are especially faith-building moments for your children. And so that means a lot of different resources, right? Yeah. It depends upon what the question is. But what happens when you have questions and you track those down and you see that God's word stands, it builds your faith. It builds your trust in it. And you're going to continue to follow it. And I think one of the important things that we do as parents is we show our kids by example how you do that. Read God's word, ask questions, track down answers, continue forward.
Okay.
Jeff, I don't know or guys, would you say something different?
Yes. No, I wouldn't.
No. Yes, yes, that's good. No. I got to give you a kudos though. You didn't actually plug your book.
Thinking, answering life's 5 biggest questions.
There's my $20.
There we go. Okay. Well, then there you have it. All you need to do is read your Bible, pray, and ask those hard questions as you're connected to a healthy local church.
Oh, church.
Yeah. Right. And if you have any of those questions, feel free to email those to extra@northview.org.
Can I add just one piece here? One of the passage that we preached on, I don't know how much you did, Andy, but I ended up doing 20 verses 23 or all the way through verse 23.
Yes, so did I.
So verses 22 and 23, like it's interesting how the first Jude has you turn your attention away from yourself to others. Mm-hmm. And the first thing he says is have mercy on those who doubt. I think in line with what you just said, Andy, one of the challenges the church has, though, is at least the perception that doubting is not something, or wavering is not something that's allowed. And so if you waver in your belief, and wavering means to be, at least for a period, between two opinions, like you're not sure whether or not this is the path you want to go or this new teaching is the way you're going to go. So you're kind of going back and forth between the two. I think what he's saying is that you don't need to scream at that person. You need to have mercy on them, but a mercy that patiently corrects and that leads them to a better understanding of things, but that is patient with the struggle. And I actually can't help but think about all the stories I've heard from people who've walked away from the faith when they said, I used to go to a church, but I started having questions, and I just felt like I couldn't ask those questions in church. I asked them, and my pastor said, just have faith. Or I just asked I'm just telling you, passages like that, have mercy on those who doubt, are enormously helpful, because what they're essentially saying is, okay, it's okay. We don't want you to stay doubting. We want you to get some answers. Like, there's no merit in just being a doubter. But having these moments where you lack surety about the thing, right? I believe, help my unbelief. That's a normal question to ask. And you should feel like you can ask those questions honestly and get answers. And if you don't happy with the answers that you get, at least for whatever reason, you consider them more. And I think that's what you're trying to say ultimately, is that it's okay to ask the questions. It's okay to chase down the answers, because the Bible is really, really good. It's got a great track record of holding up to the hardest questions anyone's ever asked.
2,000 years.
Amen.
And going.
And still going strong. All right. Well, we'll shut it down there then. There you have it. Keep asking your hard questions. Email them, extra@northview.org. Thanks.
Good job, Fredy.
You're welcome.
Slightly above average.
That was really good.
Hasta luego.